Greetings everyone, I'm RSV. Should SEGA bring back the old augmenting system? And well, my opinion is a straight up no. They should not bring back the full augmenting system. I say with a caveat, if they can make that same system intuitive enough that we do not need to use outside game resources to actually effectively augment, then I think that's actually a good addition to the game. But let's talk about how the system would change the game to start with. Well, you know those junk resurges you get after the end of every urgent quest? Well, they have augments on them now. Augments that you can interact with and move to your actual equipment, meaning they are now useful. All that trash gear is potentially useful. If the capsules were kept and this augmenting system was included, there'd be more sources of augments and more augment dropping, which is a bonus. And an advantage of this would be is that those stronger combined augments, or meta augments as they used to be called, maybe could be made for cheaper but with a chance of failing. Now, a lot of people have shunned the old augmenting system, and honestly with good reason. The system was overly complex and not at all inviting to new players. I mean, there are players that don't understand the current augmenting system, and you don't want to make it more complicated for them. But something that people do bring up is that the old system was harder. Now, I actually kind of want to put this into a bit of perspective. This really depended on the augment that you were searching for. And keep in mind the sheer number of any one augment to upgrade is a lot less in base game compared to NGS. Veteran's Resolve is a very rare and hard to obtain augment because it only applies when you were abducted in an extreme quest. But this augment is one of many augments and isn't 100% necessary for an endgame build. There are alternatives to it, and because there are alternatives to it, I believe that it's fine that it is rare. You have to go out of your way to get it. It gives people more worthwhile things to look for, and doesn't just have equipment being the be-all end-all. Another important thing to mention is actually relatively need that many Veterans Resolve. First, say Mastery. To get Mastery currently, you need to get a Captain to spawn, and then he has to drop either Mastery 2 or Mastery 3. Mastery 3 is cheaper, but you still need 400 of them to complete a full set, assuming of course you aren't using less of them for the chance at getting it on. Veterans Resolve does actually require less, and because of augmenting boosts, Veterans Resolve actually for a full playset does require less than Mastery, even though Veteran Resolve is harder to obtain. And in fact, if you have boosts, you can reduce the number that you need of Veterans Resolve. You can't really do that with Mastery, at least by much, and still make the chance that you will get it definite. Of course, base game augmenting isn't that simple. In the case of Veterans Resolve 5, you need 2 or 3 to guarantee getting it on your unit. And on top of that, you need to weave that Veterans Resolve around your units because you have an allowance on how much you can actually put on the 6 units that you already have. Augmenting can get very complicated in base game to the point that you have to win an augment that has 10% chances on it, to the point that you are doing Guardian Soul multiple times on a single unit with Soul Receptors. And I think that that element should be back in the game, but it should be opt-in, because here's the thing, I think the capsules are great. I think they make it really easy for players that don't really understand the system as much to get half decent augments on their gear, but I think the complicated system should be there to get the best of the best augments on the gear. That way, there is something deeper in the game for players to interact with, and for players that don't want to interact with it, they can then sell the augments on the gear that they get. This makes players that play the game a bit more competitive, though there is deafness farming and you can make quite a bit of gold from that. But there are other advantages to having this, or even an appraisal system. It creates situations where people will be looking for people doing augments. And on top of that, creates a situation where people will be gathering in a general area. Maybe this vendor could only be in Central Alio, so any player augmenting has to go to Central Alio, meaning it may be likely that they run into other augmenters in this process, creating community. But aspects of the old augmenting system have so much benefit to the game currently, increasing the value that the free-to-play players can get out of the game, increasing the meseta that they can earn by just playing the game. It gives more incentive for them to actually play the game, which is also important, and ultimately, players that do want that complexity then get that complexity. Personally, in the next zone, if gear started dropping with augments, I'd be playing a lot more. I'd be investing a lot more time farming those weapons, because there'd be a point to it again. Plus, I think they could be more creative with the augments that they add to the game this way. Capsules feel kinda limited in that way, and in that sense. Although, as augments came on capsules in base game, but I'd rather actually interact with different augments to upgrade them rather than have to rely on upgrading them through an arbitrary vendor. Sure, it's on the same person, but it feels arbitrary to those that are used to the old system. And personally, I think a lot of the exchange rates are very ridiculous or ludicrous to start with. But I've been RSV. Should the old augmenting be added back in any capacity to the game? I'll see you next time.